Good evening and welcome. Well, it's been a big shake-up by the BJP today of its top decision-making body, the parliamentary board, with RSS stalwarts or those close to the RSS like Nitin Gadkari and Shivraj Singh Chouhan of Madhya Pradesh being dropped from the parliamentary board, and B.S. Yediyurappa being inducted, Devendra Fadnavis getting an important position, and Yogi Adityanath not being included at all. This is a major shake-up that has been done by the Modi-Shah BJP ahead of the 2024 general elections, and this is something that will clearly have an impact on the way the BJP carries out its politics. We're going to be looking at that story very closely over the next half an hour or so. Joining us first on the program tonight is Mr. Sudhir Mungetiwar, Maharashtra Minister from the BJP. Thank you very much, Mr. Mungetiwar, for joining us. Mungetiwar ji, why do you think that Nitin Gadkari, who's been such a senior leader of the BJP, has been party president of the BJP, उनको क्यों ड्रॉप किया गया पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड से?
मैं राज्य स्तरीय नेता हूं। राज्य स्तरीय नेता के नाते केंद्र के भारतीय जनता पार्टी के निर्णयों के बारे में मुझे जानकारी नहीं हो सकती। भारतीय जनता पार्टी ये निश्चित रूप से एक परिवार है और बाकी पार्टियां ये परिवार के लिए काम करती है, मगर ये पार्टी परिवार होने से एक सदस्य की जिम्मेदारी सहजता से दूसरे सदस्य को दी जाती है, और जो सदस्य नई जिम्मेदारी लेता है और पुराने सदस्य को और कोई जिम्मेदारी का निर्वाह करने के लिए ये परिवार में और नई जिम्मेदारी सौंपी जाती है, इतना मुझे पता है। ये बात तो पक्की है कि हमारे इस पार्टी में पारिवारिक भावना होने से कोई निकलता है तो उसके मन में किंतु परंतु नहीं रहता, कोई नया आता उसके मन में भी नहीं रहता, क्योंकि तेरा वैभव अमर रहे मां हम दिन चार रहे ना रहे। राष्ट्र प्रथम, फिर पार्टी, फिर मैं, ये भावना है। कांग्रेस जैसे पार्टी में पहले मैं, फिर मेरा परिवार, फिर मेरा मित्र परिवार, ये भावना होती है।
लेकिन मुंगेतीवार जी, क्या एक मैसेज है मतलब इस रीऑर्गेनाइजेशन में? जैसे गडकरी जी और चौहान जी आरएसएस के बहुत नजदीक रहे हैं, और गडकरी जी तो he used to be critical of the government also at times. So is there a message in dropping them?
जो भारतीय जनता पार्टी के अंतरात्मा को, विचार को नहीं जानता, वो ऐसी बात सोचते हैं क्योंकि वो कांग्रेस पार्टी के अंतर्गत चश्मे से देखते हैं, वो राष्ट्रवादी के पार्टी के अंतर्गत चेहरे से देखते हैं। अब 10 जून 1999 को राष्ट्रवादी पार्टी का निर्माण हुआ, तब से एक ही अध्यक्ष है पवार साहब। हमारे पार्टी में कोई भी अध्यक्ष ये 2 टर्म से ज्यादा हो नहीं सकता। कल अमित भाई थे, फिर अब हमारे नड्डा साहब है, तो ये बात कहना उचित है क्या कि अमित भाई के जगह नड्डा जी को किए, इसका मतलब हमने नजरअंदाज अमित भाई पे कर दिया? ऐसा नहीं होता। नई जिम्मेदारी के साथ अमित भाई ने वो पद का त्याग किया है। तो मैं समझता हूं कि जो लोग भारतीय जनता पार्टी के अंतरात्मा को नहीं जानते, पथ का अंतिम लक्ष्य नहीं है सिंहासन पर चढ़ते जाना, सब समाजों को साथ लिए हमको है आगे बढ़ना, ये भावना से हम काम करते। हम भयमुक्त भारत, भूखमुक्त भारत, हम एक राष्ट्रवाद युक्त भारत, एक विषमता युक्त भारत के बारे में हमारी सोच है। ना हमारे देश के प्रधानमंत्री अपने परिवार के सदस्य को प्रधानमंत्री बनाना चाहते हैं, ना मुख्यमंत्री बनाना चाहते हैं।
सुधीर जी, आखिरी सवाल है कि आर यू सरप्राइज कि आपके एक मुख्यमंत्री हैं जो बड़े बीजेपी के नेता हैं, योगी आदित्यनाथ, उत्तर प्रदेश के मुख्यमंत्री 2 बार बन चुके हैं, बट उनको इंक्लूड नहीं किया गया इस पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड में, ऐसा क्यों?
नहीं, पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड का जो संख्या होती है वो मर्यादित होती है, और पार्लियामेंट्री बोर्ड में सभी वर्गों को प्रतिनिधित्व देना होता है। वहां पे महिला हमारी बहनों को प्रतिनिधित्व देना होता है, पिछड़े वर्गों को प्रतिनिधित्व देना होता है, और संख्या ये अमर्यादित नहीं है। कुछ पार्टियों में पार्टी के संविधान से कोई कार्य नहीं होता, मगर भारतीय जनता पार्टी हमेशा संविधान जो पार्टी का है उसके आधार पे काम करना चाहती है, और उसी कारण संख्या नियंत्रित होती है, संख्या मर्यादित होती है। तो सभी को स्थान देते समय उस पर मर्यादा आ जाती है.
All right, Sudhir Mungetiwar, thank you very much for joining us with your perspective on that big rejig in the BJP today. Well, joining us on the program now, Smita Prakash, the editor of ANI, senior journalist Neerja Chaudhary, and senior journalist and columnist and author Rashid Kidwai. Thank you very much to all of you for being with us. Smita Prakash, what are the big takeaways for you from this rejig? Obviously, one eye on the 2024 general election, but it clearly seems also a big eye on Karnataka.
There are two committees, as you mentioned. There's the Parliamentary Board and the Central Election Committee, both equally important in decision making in the BJP. The news peg, as you mentioned, is the non-inclusion of or the dropping of Nitin Gadkari and Shivraj Chouhan, and the non-inclusion of Yogi Adityanath, who some, as you mentioned, feel that he's delivered Uttar Pradesh, so he should have been there. But the BJP saying that it's an inclusive kind of a setup now, and they have diversity, they have new blood, because that's why they have this Iqbal Singh Lalpura, then they have woman now, Sudha Yadav, and they have Jatiya. They have Sarbanda Sonowal. So, people from different parts. And of course, there's Yediyurappa out there, because Karnataka elections, as you mentioned, which is important. There's BL Santosh. So, Yediyurappa, Fadnavis, Rajnath Singh, BL Santosh, these people being there because, this whole thing about states going to election and, important to win, because that's how the BJP functions, because they don't see, okay, we've got this big win in Uttar Pradesh, so we can rest easy. That's not how the BJP functions. Each election is fought with this, with a huge incentive that they have to win every state and not take anything easily. Some are saying that, some leaders had to be placated or accommodated, and that's why probably Yediyurappa or Fadnavis. But I respectfully disagree, because that's not how the BJP has been functioning since 2019. They work like an MNC with a spreadsheet of achievers and non-achievers and plus and minus point. Not saying that Gadkari or Shivraj Chouhan are non-achievers. In fact, quite the opposite. They have been achievers. They've been doing phenomenal work. But with elections in mind, I think they need new blood and new ideas, and that's why the rejig.
Right. And it's interesting, I just want to take off from what you said, that Rashid Kidwai, is there also therefore a generational shift in the way Mr. Modi and Mr. Shah are looking at the BJP now? If you look at the past, the ties with the RSS are very strong, and someone like Mr. Gadkari, who is very close to the RSS, has often even criticized the government or made a snide remark here and there, and done it simply because he had the backing of the RSS. So does this indicate that Mr. Shah and Mr. Modi are now in complete control, and in a sense they're calling the shots and not the RSS now?
Yes, Nidhi, I think the upshot of this today's exercise is that the RSS and the BJP are on the same page, and there is no differences, and that the perceived notion of Mr. Gadkari coming from Nagpur and having very good access with the Sar Sanchalak, etc., has been negated. Normally, in any political party, a parliamentary board is considered as a barometer of a person's political stature. But when you have a supreme leadership concept, whether it was in Congress in the past or today's BJP, these things become inconsequential. All kind of arguments can be marshaled. But the fact of the matter is, BJP is very careful. The present day BJP leadership is very clear. They don't want to give any avenue for any kind of future, line of succession or so. So Shivraj Singh Chouhan may be the longest serving chief minister of the BJP, the entire history of BJP, but they don't want to accord any importance to him. They don't want to reward Yogi. They don't want to have Gadkari around, who's been making kind of politically incorrect noises, etc. I think it's very clear. It shows who's the boss and how party is going to run.
I want to sort of discuss that Yogi Adityanath point a little more with Neerja Chaudhary, because, Smita Prakash said the BJP argument is that this is a more inclusive parliamentary board, and, that we've looked at representation from election-bound states, other states like Assam, etc. But then Yogi Adityanath is their star chief minister. Winning UP twice was a record for the BJP in itself. What is the real message here? Is it that they want to limit him to Uttar Pradesh and prevent him from being elevated to a national role?
Look, I would say in one line before I go into Yogi Adityanath, why he could have been excluded. This is an out and out Modi team. You know, Narendra Modi has been moving in this direction. The cabinet now is increasingly his team. There are very few people, who are remnants from the past. And of course, Rajnath Singh is one of them who continues to be in the parliamentary board. So if you look at it from that point of view, those totally out and out loyal to Mr. Narendra Modi are now finding their place in his team, both in government and in the party. Yogi Adityanath and remember Hemanta Biswa Sarma, who's also the rising star in the BJP. And if people have been talking of the future, the post-Modi era, certainly Yogi Adityanath's name figures there. Hemanta Biswa Sarma's name of late has also, people have been whispering that he has a future, very bright future. Now, both of them are out. And somewhere, I think nobody will be allowed to be very powerful. There's only one leader out there. His writ will run. People are going to be there, powerful, but not, beyond the point. And in fact, you have a Rajnath Singh to counter Yogi, and fellow Thakur from UP, and you have Sarbananda Sonowal to counter an ST to counter Hemanta Biswa Sarma, who's also been growing very powerful. Yediyurappa, if I may say, Fadnavis, if I may say, his wings were already clipped. Being number 2 in the Maharashtra government, so he had to be placated for bringing the government, for agreeing to be part of the government as number 2. And Yediyurappa is a necessity in Karnataka. It's the old war horse. You cannot wish him away. And with Karnataka elections now around the corner, his hold amongst the Mutts and the Lingayats continuing to be there, the BL Santosh strategy in Karnataka, which is being put into motion. So all these things we see Yediyurappa, being in these.
Say that because what you're saying sounds a little bit like another political party that we're all familiar with, which is the Congress. And Smita Prakash, is there a danger here? Is it a good thing or a bad thing that the BJP in a sense is so over-centralized now that like the Congress, it doesn't want state leaders to rise beyond a point, and that there will be checks and balances that will be put into place, vis-a-vis regional leaders? The Congress did the same thing.
Is it like the Congress? Rashid says that probably because, like it was during Indira Gandhi's time, that, you have one leader and nobody else. The thing is that whenever elections happen, Nidhi, in any state, if the BJP looks a little down, what do all election pundits say? That, let Modi start campaigning and then you'll see what happens and the tide will turn and the BJP will win. So if he is the one who's going to be, winning states, winning the center, making even people who are losing candidates win, then obviously he's going to be the one who decides. Now, when you see the party of 2014 and you see now, 8.5 years, 9 years going by, there are just 2 more years left now, So of the 19 ministers who were inducted in 2014, Nidhi, only 4 remain in the cabinet. The message has been clear since 2014, you perform or you perish. But that having been said, when people are taken out, like for example, you had Ravi Shankar Prasad who was out, you had Javadekar, Harshvardhan, you had so many people, Suresh Prabhu, do you even hear a ripple within the party? There is no, forget about a rebellion. There is not even a questioning, there's not even a leak as to why they went out. But, the party lays supreme confidence in this decision-making body and in the leadership provided by Narendra Modi and Amit Shah as far as staying in power, coming to power is concerned. And as Neerja pointed out, they need to win Karnataka and Himachal. Now, those 2 states, it's an uphill task. You've seen what's happening, and that's why Yediyurappa, because of the caste factor and things like that. And they need to win Gujarat all over again. So despite BJP dropping the names in the past, and not causing any tension. Yeah.
Right.
So rehabilitation is a word that I'm a little wary of when it comes to the BJP.
that perhaps, but it's such a contrast. We're seeing the BJP already, Rashid Kidwai, doing all this planning, not just for Karnataka, for 2024, and they're very brutal and sort of, nikalna hai kisi ko to nikalna hai, they'll do it, kisi ko rakhna hai to rakhna hai. And then you have the Congress, which is, still at sea since 2014, and, we're supposed to be seeing organizational elections now in the next few days. We still don't know whether Mr. Gandhi wants to be Congress president or not, and what's going to happen then. It's such a contrast, isn't it?
Absolutely. I think there is a couplet in Urdu, कि जब खुदा हुस्न देता है नजाकत आई जाती है. See, the BJP is a ruling party. It's winning election. Whatever it is doing, it becomes a major talking point. The Congress is, fortunes have taken a nosedive. Nothing seems to be working for them. You look at the state of affairs in Rajasthan and elsewhere. This month, supposedly, the Congress organization's elections were to take place. There is no buzz whether Rahul is going to be, Rahul Gandhi is going to contest or not contest, going to be a, non-Gandhi person leading the Congress. And Rahul wants to just go on a yatra, 6 months yatra. So there is a mood is of, one of despondency in the Congress, whereas the BJP is very upbeat. We may go on talking about this kind of, rejig in the parliamentary board. This is basically a journalistic exercise. The messaging is very clear. It is the top leadership that matters. It's their sweet will, Daya and Kripa, who they want to keep in and who they want to show the door. There is no patron. Performance, non-performance doesn't matter, because the person who's performing is the Prime Minister and the Home Minister.
Okay, last question, Nidra Chaudhary. Do you believe that the RSS is in sync completely with Mr. Modi and Shah, that they don't really have a choice given the winning combination that is there, and therefore has Mr. Modi established his supremacy clearly over the Sangh Parivar?
I think that's correct. And the most significant part of this exercise, to my mind, is the ouster of Nitin Gadkari. Nitin Gadkari has been there courtesy the Sangh, the RSS leadership. And they had at one time seen him as a possible PM in the future, not of late. And for him to go out of the highest decision-making body of the BJP is a very big decision. I would answer your question in a different way. I would say this thing doesn't happen in the RSS and the BJP, what I'm going to spell out. But hypothetically speaking, if the RSS Karyakarta today was to had to choose between the RSS leadership and Narendra Modi, they would choose Narendra Modi. That was not the case in the past.
Yeah,
so that is how things have changed. And Nitin Gadkari's ouster also indicates that. Narendra Modi is today the leader of the BJP, the government also of the RSS.
Absolutely, and I think if you contrast it with Mr. Vajpayee's time, all of you would remember how different the sort of government RSS equations were back then. And the RSS would often take pot shots at the Vajpayee government and would try to dictate terms. It's so different now today with Mr. Modi's leadership that is sort of clearly calling the shots. Quick last question, or I'm just out of time on that, so I'm just going to thank all of you for joining us with your analysis on that big political story today.